Hi guys, Truth Seeker 333 here. I wanted to elaborate a little more on some of the things that are going on inside of my head with regard to ideas about energy and self-sustainability. Okay. Now you've probably seen these containers in some of my other videos, and what I've been really interested in is ethanol production, okay, from specifically grass clippings or weeds, okay. So here's my initial idea, okay. Figuring out a way to break down cellulistic biomass, okay, and so this is one of the methods that I've been incorporating. Now, when I first started this, I've been having some ideas. I guess you could even call them visions, or yeah. So like when I first started this, I had this right here, okay. Now if you look at that, you can see it's got some weeds in there, some grass, and this has been soaking in this for over a year, okay. And as you can see, it's quite resilient. You know, the weeds do not break down. Now, what is this liquid? This is specifically hydrolyzed onion juice. Okay. So one of the ideas I had when I was studying this was that one of the things that breaks down onions, it's one of the most common funguses or yeasts, I guess you could say, that it's all around us. It causes what's known as black rot on the onion, and it actually will create a cellulase that breaks that onion down into a liquid form, and it liquefies the onion. It liquefies the fiber to where it just melts. That's why, you know, when you see an onion rotting and it gets all slimy and it's like falling apart, that's what's happening. It's hydrolyzing. It's becoming a liquid form. Now what happens is, when that occurs, it releases the sugars that the bacteria eat, and they eat that, and then the byproduct is alcohol, okay, or ethanol, and the ethanol is what we can use as fuel. So one of my first thoughts was, well, what if you could just take onion juice that already has some of those cellulases in them and see how they affect weeds or grass, and see if they break it down at all. And honestly, I mean, if you look at that, you can see it's still quite intact. But I could swear a year ago when I put it in there, it was a little more, there was a little more bulk. And I think that some of it did hydrolyze the weaker parts of the weeds or certain kinds of weeds, but it would be hard for me to determine. And so basically, you look at it now and it's like, okay, you get an idea here on the strength of the lignins and the structure of cellulose and how resilient it is. These weeds have been soaking for over a year and they just not breaking down. Now, if these were like laying out on the lawn, laying on the grass, the sun would hit them, they would dry out, bugs would come by, they would eat them and pass through their intestines, and they would break down these weeds as well. But looking into a method whereby you can essentially liquefy the weeds, release the glucoses in that structure, in those weed structures, and then thereby add yeast and produce alcohol, then distill it off. Now, the whole process that I've been imagining is a combination of utilizing either a volatile breakdown process with sodium hydroxide. Okay. Now, the reason that I was thinking about sodium hydroxide is because I'm looking for a simple answer to something that should be a simple process for anybody that they could do in their spare time. Not a lot of effort, not a lot of investment, just something that would revolutionize home energy production. Okay. And what would that revolution be? Well, the revolution would be take your weeds, take your grass clippings, put them in a container, however big of a container you want to put it in. Add your solution that you can make at home easily. Okay. Melt the weeds. Okay. Easily and safely. The sodium hydroxide can be quite volatile. It's a very alkaline substance. Okay. Now, on the other spectrum of that is sulfuric acid, and I don't want to mess with that. At least not yet, because I haven't felt confident enough to deal with that. So once you release the sugars, you have to bring the whole solution up to a pH of 7 again, or pH of 6, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So if you're putting a sodium hydroxide into the liquid, which is what I did over here. Let me come back over here. So this is the solution that I utilized sodium hydroxide with. Okay. And this is after I had put the yeast in it and I had put the airlock on it. Now, I don't even know if this is worth anything right now, but what I'm looking into lately is an easier way to test for sugar content or alcohol content. I do have a hydrometer that I've been playing with and trying to learn how to read better and easier, but lately I've been looking at refractometers, which are a little bit more a little easier to look at. Or even a digital refractometer where, you know, you just take the drops and drop it in, and it'll give you a digital reading of a Brix reading, which will tell you, depending on the type of refractometer, how much sugar content, how much alcohol content. Okay. Now, when I first, okay, let me get back to this. Now, I've got these buckets here. Let's see if I can show you here. I got this bucket here. Looks like it rained a little here, so. Okay. Now, you can see it's got some stuff in there. And I believe that's the one that I threw weeds into. Let me see if I've got my metal spoon that I was using to stir it. Or maybe, you know what, I think it's in this one here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. I think it's in here. Yeah, that kind of looks like it. Hold on a second. Let me find my spoon or a stick that, I can kind of stir this up and show you. Hold on a second. Okay, so I've got a little stick that I'm just gonna show you here. And here, let me get the right angle so you can see. Okay. So, again, this has kind of been sitting here for about 6 months, and you can see the mass of weeds and grass that have been soaking in sodium hydroxide, getting very mushy. So I guess, you know, it's even broken down more as it's been in there. And as I recall, here, let me stand up. Let me cover that up because it's still very alkaline. I also need to measure the pH on that because I had it up to a pH of about 12. Okay, and that's why I keep it covered. But the more it sits, the more the alkaline goes down. Now, the idea was I put weeds in there, and I just bought some sodium hydroxide online because at this point I don't want to get into the process of making it. Okay, but the idea is that you can make your own sodium hydroxide using wood ash. Okay, and you know, that's something I've started to do. Like right here, I've been saving like wood ash. Here's a little container I got. Whoop! I'm spilling everything. Okay, there's my wood ash. Okay. And I've got containers like this that whenever I have a barbecue, I just save all my wood ash. Now, I either put that into my compost, or I'm going to use it for a project to kind of create my own lye or sodium hydroxide, and then see how much I can use that to create an alkalinity in the water to break down weeds, to break down those materials. Now, I haven't been motivated lately because that's kind of how my mind works. I get involved in a lot of different projects, and then but right now I feel really, lately this week I've just been reactivated as far as my ideas about energy again. Okay, so I hope you're following this here. Okay, so you got the weeds that you pick from your garden. Like I got a bunch of stuff over here that you know, I just throw down, like right here. And this is just a bunch of biomass. Like eventually I want to see if I can utilize twigs and wood and stuff like that as well. But you know, what I'll do is when I'm weeding, I keep my weeds in a bucket and I just let them dry out. Okay, and I'll show you that over here. But just, you know, everything can be used. Okay, and you know, if we can use this to create fuel, you can use it to cook with, you can use it for all kinds of things. Okay, so here's like a bucket of weeds from just weeding a little area in here, you know, all in here, and I just throw them out there and leave them in the bucket, and then they dry out, and then I throw them in a pile in the back, and then those are the ones that I'd use to like throw into that 5-gallon bucket, and add the sodium hydroxide and the water. And I have a little digital pH meter to read exactly how much pH I can get in there. Now I was trying to get it really concentrated, but I could only get it up to like 12. And like if you can get it, I guess as high as like 14. But I thought, well, okay, if that's all I can get it up to 12, and you know, you really should like wear gloves and other stuff like that. But at any rate, you can see that even with the pH at 12 and those weeds sitting in that sodium hydroxide for like 6 months, still very there's still a lot of cellulose intact in that. But you know, I haven't smelled it lately. Let me give it a smell. But it had a sweet smell when I was first doing it, because you could smell the glucose is being released. And just pull that up there. Hold on. No, it doesn't smell sweet anymore. But I think that's because some rainwater got in there. And at any rate, I also added lemon juice to that mixture over there, and that was the next point I was getting to, was regulating the pH back down. This yard over here has a lemon tree, and I was able to get a bunch of, you know, old lemons and use the lemon juice as the acid to bring that pH down and bring it back down to like a 7. Now, why is that necessary? Well, because you can't have bacteria thriving in an environment that is that alkaline. It will not produce, it will not eat the sugar. It will not even live in that environment. So you want to have that bacteria in as much neutral as you can get it. And so I brought it down to that, and then I put it into this container here. I filtered it off through cheesecloth, just the liquids, because there was still biomass in there. And then I added yeast to this, and I let this ferment. Now I haven't, I tried to do a freeze distillation with this later on to see if I could get an alcohol. What I got was something that smelled quite like oil, to be honest with you. This doesn't smell like, actually, this has sort of a petrol smell to it already. But what I need to determine, because I wasn't able to, I was trying to light that liquid, so I had like a wick in a little container, and I was like trying to like light it, but I don't think the concentrations were strong enough. I think there was too much water in it, and so what I've constantly been thinking about is maybe I do have to get into the creating an actual distillation process, which is a heat distillation process, instead of the freeze distillation process, which I want to do. But ultimately I do want to have a freeze distillation process that's run by solar panels, which is going to be, and I'm sharing these ideas with all of you because we got to share the knowledge. And if one of you has the answer to a lot of these same issues, then you could take my knowledge and run with it and make the world a better place. So the idea is to go off to like a Walmart or a big box store and buy a small box freezer unit. Okay, box freezer, you know, the ones with the lids that go up like this. And once you got your production rolling with like these 5-gallon buckets, you could take the whole bucket and put it into the box freezer and have a whole whole battery pack that's charged up by solar panels. Basically a whole solar system unit that just is dedicated to that box freezer. Okay, so like let's say 4 batteries linked together with a controller and 2 big panels just to run that freezer. Okay, and what you would do is just take the whole 5-gallon bucket, put it into the box freezer, freeze the whole thing. Then you take it out and somehow have an evaporative process to where you can drain off the alcohol, because the way it works is the alcohol will liquefy quicker. It's all mixed with water and alcohol. It'll liquefy quicker than into a smaller container. Take that container, refreeze that container, rinse and repeat the process. Okay, but the whole thing is based off of very little effort once it's set up. Okay, it's basically taking weeds, throwing them into a bucket of solution, letting them sit, going back, taking your readings every once in a while, taking that stuff off, putting it into another container, fermenting it, then taking that, throwing that into a freezer, taking that out, melting it off, putting it back in, melting it off, pouring them into gas cans, pouring your ethanol into gas cans for storage. Okay, because ethanol, apparently you can save ethanol a lot longer than you can save gasoline. So pouring your ethanol into gas cans, and then, you know, if you're only producing a cup, you know, at a time, who cares? You're storing it up and it's accumulating. As you're going through your daily process, you just do a little here and there. Okay? So ultimately you're building up your process to store ethanol fuel. And of course, none of this is for drinking purposes, because this is like, that would require a lot more sanitation, because there's just a lot more like volatile things in there. And since you would never be drinking any of that stuff, you don't have to worry about the sodium hydroxide you're putting in there, and you know, because it's just like all that would just burn off through whatever process you're using that ethanol for. Okay, so tell me what you think of those thoughts. That's my master plan idea. Okay, that's sort of a master plan idea. And so the next step that I need to do in this is I want to get a refractometer, because I'm going to test the current batches that I have right there for either alcohol content or sugar content. And then I'm going to start the process over again, and you could follow this video series as I do that. over the next umpteen years. I don't know. But anyway, this is the idea. At home ethanol production target. Backyard ethanol production, easy backyard ethanol production challenge. We're trying to figure it out. And I like the freeze distillation process idea because this is an urban environment, so it's not like you can have things burning in your backyard all the time. I mean, you could, but I think it'd be easier to have it with the freezer running off of a solar-powered system. Okay. All right. God bless you guys. Keep seeking truth. Tell me what you think of my ideas, and I'll see you next time. Bye.